While Inside Out 2 was an undeniable success for Disney this summer, as it is now the number one grossing animated film of all time, there is some things coming out after the fact now that seem to have leaks that have come from Pixar about some ways in which employees were mistreated, which we will talk about in a separate video. But the video I wanted to talk about today is summarized a bit over on That Park Place, is that in this article, and this is originally from IGN, but this article here sums it up a little bit better because that article is very long, is that the rumor is that Disney executives stamped out any alleged gay interpretations from Inside Out 2 after Lightyear's box office failure. So I figured let's read through this and give some thoughts on this because this is a very interesting topic that is brought up in that other article. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And again, we'll just read here. It says, a new rumor claims that Disney and Pixar executives instructed the Inside Out 2 team to remove any possible gay interpretations from Inside Out 2 after Lightyear's box office failure. A report from IGN's Alex Stedman, which cites multiple anonymous individuals at Disney, claims that Disney executives blamed the failure of Lightyear on its inclusion of a gay kiss. Lightyear only grossed $218 million, and the film had an estimated production budget of $200 million, which, if you understand how the box office works, that movie lost money because although it grossed $218 million, when it comes to box office takes, you can basically just have that in terms of what the studio gets because they have to do a split with movie theaters. And in some countries, the split is not as favorable to the studio. So basically, they made about $100 million roughly on this movie, and it lost money, which also does not include typically the advertising budget either. So one source told Stedman, it is, as far as I know, still a thing where leadership, they'll bring up Lightyear specifically and say, oh, Lightyear was a financial failure because it had a queer kiss in it. That's not the reason the movie failed. Despite the source's claim, Disney executives instructed Pixar creatives to make Inside Out 2 less gay, Stedman writes. Sources describe rumors that were special care put into making the relationship between Riley and Val, a supporting character introduced in Inside Out 2, seem as platonic as possible, even requiring edits to the lighting and tone of certain scenes to remove any trace of romantic chemistry. One source told him that Pixar did, quote, a lot of extra work to make sure no one would potentially see them as not straight. While Disney allegedly provided instructions to remove any gay implications, one source made it clear that Riley is not gay. The source told Stedman, mind you, Riley is not canonically gay. In the film, what you saw, nothing about Riley says that she is gay, but it is kind of inferred based on certain context. And so that is something that they tried to play down at multiple points. Says this should not be a surprise, given Pixar released a short titled Riley's First Date back in 2015, where she goes on a date with a boy named Jordan. And it appears the strategy of stamping out any kind of gayness in the film, if true, worked out extraordinarily well for Pixar and Disney, as the film grossed $652 million domestically and another $1.018 billion internationally for a global gross of $1.67 billion, and the film had an estimated budget of $200 million. It's a very valid point in this. I mean, it's hard to tell from, they're just basically saying what these employees are saying, but if, Disney is saying internally that Lightyear basically tanked because of a gay kiss. And I don't know if that is the actual reason that movie tanked. I think that movie had a lot of problems. So it's hard to say. For some people, I'm sure they didn't see that movie or didn't want to see that movie because that kiss was hyped up. But overall, that movie was pretty bland. And also you had the issue with it being a Toy Story franchise and people are synonymous with Buzz Lightyear with Tim Allen. And you had this different version of Buzz Lightyear that was voiced by Chris Evans, that the animation was different. The story was different. It wasn't lighthearted. It wasn't fun like the Toy Story movie. So I do think, to be fair to them, that this movie had a lot of other issues going on beyond just a gay kiss in it. If this rumor is true, it is a drastic shift for the Walt Disney Company strategy. Disney Television's animation executive producer LaToya Raveno admitted that she had been injecting a, quote, not all too gay secret agenda into the shows she works on just 2 years ago in 2022. She said during Disney's Reimagine Tomorrow conference, in my little pocket of proud family Disney TVA, the showrunners were super welcoming. Meredith Roberts and our leadership over there have been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda. She added, maybe it was the way it was in the past, but I guess something that must have happened in the last, they are turning it around. They're going hard. And then like all the momentum that I felt, that sense of, I don't just have to be afraid to let's just have these two characters kiss in the background. I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness. If you see anything queer in the show, no one would stop me, and no one was trying to stop me. So whether or not this is true or not, I think it's probably beyond the point here. It does seem that this has a lot of credibility, as a lot of people are coming from Pixar. And in this same story, there's also other ones which we'll have a separate video on, talking about how a lot of the Pixar employees were not treated the best according to them. So there's a lot of leaks coming out of Pixar. So even though Disney does have a win in this movie, undoubtedly, it seems that it is causing some issues maybe internally at the company. Now, when it comes to Riley being gay or not wanting to be perceived gay, and Lightyear failing because of a gay kiss, it's one of those things where, like I said, I don't think Lightyear failed because of a gay kiss. But what this really kind of points to is a lot of the rhetoric coming out of Disney is being more focused on these issues than telling a good story, than having a good movie or a good TV show. And when these things are at the forefront, if they're just so focused on having a character in a movie that is gay and then not the story, what happens is the story, the movie, the show, whatever it is, it suffers because all that they really seem to care about is pushing a certain message. Well, when you're talking about Disney, and especially when you're talking about movies and TV shows, at least historically, that have been geared toward children, parents aren't all going to be on board with showing this to their kids. Some parents will make the decision that that's okay and that is their prerogative. But there are parents who decide, this is not what I want my children to see. This is not a conversation that I'm ready to have with my child, or this is not something that I don't feel like Disney needs to be interjecting these types of topics to my children. I would rather be doing this. So they're entering into a landscape in which they're going to be met with resistance. And we're used to, with Disney, they weren't met with this resistance. They just had good, wholesome movies that parents could know they could turn it on to, and kids could watch it and to worry about things. There was no violence. There was no sexual things in nature at all, straight or gay. And now they've brought this into the mix. And I think Disney has seen from the box office, again, Lightyear and other movies not doing well, and now this one doing well. If Disney does believe internally that the gay kiss is what bombed Lightyear, this would give them all the basically ammunition they would need, that going the other way makes them money. And I think that's probably, the corporate message coming out of this. Corporations don't tend to get into the weeds on, well, the kiss in this movie wasn't, a forefront thing. It wasn't the main focus. All they know is they hear about people complaining about this because this was something they probably brought up and people were proud about it. And then the movie didn't do well, and then they put two and two together. So whether this is actually the truth or just something that Disney believes, it doesn't really matter, because I think the lesson or the thing that they're going to take away from this is, okay, so when we have movies that don't have this message in there at all, they do really, really well. And I think that is something that maybe Disney takes forward. We'll have to see about that. But Disney has basically come out and said that they want to get out of the culture war. And I think on some level, they do want to get out of the culture war, but I think the employees internally don't want to get out of the culture war. So I think you have a little bit of a, I don't know if you would call it a civil war, but you have a little bit of a battle internally between Disney. And so I'm sure the management and other people say, hey, we got to cut back on this stuff. We don't want this in the movie. Whereas a lot of the employees do, and they want to push it. So that's probably causing a lot of friction. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that's what some of the issues with Pixar is in the making of Inside Out 2, as it seems like there's a lot of people that weren't too happy about that. But I think the overall message that Disney and other corporations, studios should take away from this is focusing on these things of a character being gay or straight or whatever it is, and not focusing on the story itself is going to hurt your product. So it seems like Inside Out 2 has been received very well. It seems like the story they told really resonated with people. And I think that's one of the reasons as to why this movie was a success, is because the movie and the story was solid. It didn't have anything that parents had to worry about in terms of letting their kids see it. And again, you're seeing it with the box office that this movie was very successful. So we'll have to wait and see, I suppose, on some level, if the next following movies all stay to this sort of formula that if this is allegedly true that Inside Out 2 had. And I'm assuming with the success of Inside Out 2, you very well could see them really say, okay, we implemented this strategy with this movie and we made a ton of money. That, again, the number one animated movie ever in terms of box office. So it would be really hard to argue against this, even if you did want to push these things, even if you did decide that you didn't want to stick to this formula. It's hard to argue at the end of the day about making money, which we all know at the end of the day, most corporations, studios, and businesses are all about making money. So this is definitely something we could see going forward. I think the lesson that they could just take out of this is good storytelling, get back to your basics of what really built Pixar and Disney animation, clearly is successful. And Inside Out 2 seems to be a throwback to what Pixar used to do, which Pixar was until recently one of the most, best names you could ever see in animation. Success after success after success. So getting back to that formula is not a bad thing. I think when it comes to kids programming, being less divisive as possible is probably the best route, because again, it's kids programming. Kids movies are pretty simple. They're just supposed to be good, lighthearted stories that are fun and entertaining for little kids. And they're not supposed to be anything else much more than that. And so I think this is why this movie did well. But we'll have to wait and see if this is something that goes on into the future with Pixar, and if this goes over into Disney animation as well in terms of the stories being told, and if this is a focal point of management when making these movies and or shows and things like that. But again, this is a rumor. This originally came out of IGN, but again, that article is a very, very long article. So this one here kind of summed up that aspect of it. But either way, that is going to be it for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of theme parks and pop culture. And be sure to let us know in the comments what you think about all this. And until next time, we will see you later.